Fear makes you stop in your track. We had to kind of just let our fear go and dive into this because it was almost like at the time it was our calling. And the more we kept trying to let life get in the way, the more we kept getting pulled back to it.
In this episode of Conversations Beyond the Brand, Dr. Tashana Thompson sits down with longtime friend and former business partner at Beyond Business Solutions,
Joline Falco, creative genius, self-taught skills in graphic and web development.
The story of us came because of sort of being pushed into a direction. There was a strong personality sort of fighting against us. And when we realized, hey, well, we work really good together and we're not actually accomplishing anything because we're spending our days dealing with this personality versus doing the job. And then that's when our common interest came into place. Like, we want to actually build something and grow something.
What would you say to other women who are kind of navigating the space where the business relationship failed, but they're trying to figure out a way to maintain their friendship?
To trust the process. It's very easy in the moment when things are falling down and anxiety's creeping in, and to get caught up in it and surrender to it because it's all part of the process.
You know how sometimes you feel like if a friend has hurt your feelings that you really can't tell them?
I sort of kept my thoughts, my feelings in the back burner because I know what I did to you. I know what I did.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Conversations Beyond the Brand, where strategy meets soul and heartfelt conversations. And today's conversation is deeply, deeply personal to me. This is my former business partner, longtime friend, my heart's Joline Falco. And we're going to have a really, really honest and transparent conversation about our business partnership and how we transitioned out of that and into working together still, and how our friendship survived it all. I think that's the most important takeaway that we want y'all to leave with today. We hear about so many failed business relationships that kind of end really, really badly. But we are here as testimonies that you can survive. So, Joline, thank you so much for being with me. I call it JoJo sometimes. So it's fine. Thank you for having this conversation with me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
So tell us a little bit about you.
A little bit about me. Well, like you said, we pretty much have been together, I hate to say, over 20 years.
The age of this girl.
A little bit about me. I right around the time we met, I had just moved to Atlanta from Florida. I came to Atlanta to have opportunities to kind of see something bigger than what was around me in my small little town. And I've been in Atlanta ever since. I have a wonderful family, a brother, sister, many nieces and nephews, some fur babies, dogs, cats. And in regards to my daytime, I have been doing everything from website development, website design, graphic design. I've done some sales, marketing. I've traveled all over, doing all sorts of great things in my job. But when it's 5 p.m. and the computers go off, I enjoy doing anything from art, getting out, working in the garden, staying active, going on walks, just spending time with my loved ones.
Aw, I love it. I love it. So let's start from the beginning, because Jolene and I have been friends in each other's lives for over 20 years. Probably, 21 years, 22 years this year. So start from the beginning. You tell the story of how we met.
Okay.
Version.
Yes. We met, like I said, about 20 years ago, working at our former job at a trade association. And I was there initially at first, working as the head of marketing when a young, fresh out of college intern walked in the door. Tashana, cute Tashana walks in. She was nervous. She had her hair greased back in a ponytail as tight
Hey,
as
great,
tight to
y'all.
me. Yeah, you know how you did it.
Yeah, it's like good old pro style gel. Yes.
And she was so nervous waiting for her interview from the executive director. And I just remember her sitting there, but there was something about her light around her, her energy, even in her nervous state, that I knew from that moment that we were going to be friends. I wanted her in my life. And I was trying to give her space. Do you want this? Do you want that? You want a drink? And she's just, again, just sitting there as nervous as can be. And as I knew what happened, she got the job. And it didn't take too long until we had our first date where we went to Willie's. And that was it. That was it from there.
Mm, that is so true. Like I can almost kind of go back to that time, and I'm so far removed from it. Like as a pretty self assured and confident, almost 43-year-old woman, but walking into that office as a 22-year-old, and that association we were at the time, I was still in college, finishing out my senior year, but um the organization was transitioning, and this was a portion of the organization I was working for was transitioning and breaking up into parts. So I was having to go kind of interview for the job I already had, um, as as a coordinator. I was a student, but I was still a coordinator. And yeah, I met this girly that day, and we became fast friends, and have really been friends, and even beyond friends, like sisters. Like we have been through a lot together, not just in the business, but personally in life. All the tragedies that you can think of, we've been through breakups, deaths, um, devastating losses, like we've been through together. Um, but before we get into all the personal stuff, let's talk about our original vision for the business. And it's important to note that the business was not called Beyond Business Solutions. We had a very interesting name. Do you remember it, Jolie?
Run, Shay.
What do 20-year-olds to do? They name the business after themselves and make it their middle name. And Jolene's middle name is Aurora. My middle name is Nashay. And this was our business. And oh, this is like Victory Lane. Let me
Which
try to
was
find the
it was a
shits.
yeah, it was a beautiful name, but we realized that nobody could say it.
Nobody could say it and nobody understood what it meant. Like I was just in a strategy session with a client this morning, planning for a new community that they're launching. And one of the things that we were saying in choosing the name of the community is like we want it to be something that people immediately know what it is, and people just didn't know what it was when that was our name. Um, but you and I are very different,
Oh yeah.
and I think that's the beauty of our relationship too. So talk about some of the strengths that each of us were bringing to the table.
That's a great question because, like you said, we are very different, but we're also very similar. Our values, family, our internal beings, and what I mean by that is our honesty, our compassion, our empathy. Those are all the same. But I am very emotional, and I tend to let my emotions get the best of me sometimes. And you are always, while you are also emotional, you have a way of not taking what I say when I get emotional personally, but sort of grounding me when I need it, or saying, yes, you're right to feel this way, or you might just be a little bit dramatic right now. Let's bring that in and bring that back. So yeah, that kind of yin and yang has worked for us, especially in business. And also, too, you are a great people person. You have this knack of being up in front of clients and talking to them and remembering things. And I am always been the one that prefers to be behind the scenes, kind of like the Wizard of Oz. I like to be behind the curtain, and you're, like to be out there. And that was perfect for us because I don't shine in network events. I get very socially awkward. I get within myself. But when I'm in a one-on-one with somebody I'm comfortable with is when I let my personality shine. And your personality is just, it's out there and it's beautiful. And I've always admired that about you.
Oh, you're so sweet. Yeah, but you know what? You say that you're the emotional one. I think that you've only become emotional in like the last 10 years. I think before I was the hothead. When I was young, I was very rah rah. Like very, very rah rah. Like everything was a fight. We wanted to fight and burn everything down. Um, and you grounded me during that time. And I think that, as we both have transitioned and just matured, you know, sometimes the roles reverse, and that's what happens in good relationships. But let's talk a little bit about what our original vision for the business was. Because we talked about the old name, but yeah, let's talk about what that vision was. You remember?
Well, I feel as if the story of us came because of sort of being pushed into a direction, and then the vision came later. And what I mean by that is, as you spoke, the time the association was transitioning, and a lot of times when there's transition, there's inner turmoil and conflicts and struggles, and some people are fighting harder for their jobs where other people want to work for a team. And without getting too much into that, there was a strong personality sort of fighting against us. And when we realized, hey, well, we work really good together and we're not actually accomplishing anything because we're spending our days dealing with this personality versus doing the job. And then that's when our common interest came into place. Like, no, we don't want to do water cooler talk. We don't want to fight. We don't want to do all that stuff. We want to actually build something and grow something. And we've always both been strong, independent women. And it was sort of like life pushed us in this direction. And once we realized life pushed us, we were like, okay, now the vision came after.
Right, right. I think that's so telling. And I'll share it some other time, like how it came together, totally for me, because it was such a big testimony in my life. But, you're right. We were in a really uncomfortable situation. And sometimes I believe God makes you uncomfortable to push you out of things that you've outgrown that you wouldn't otherwise leave on your own because you're comfortable with the money and you're comfortable with, even if it's hell, it's a hell, right? Like even if you're miserable, it's a misery that and that you've grown accustomed to. And I think that that was a situation, but I can remember our executive director pretty much saying to us, like, pretty the way he said it, like, either this is the way it is. I can't remember exactly what he said. I'm sure I have it in a journal somewhere around here. But he pretty much said, like, okay, this is it. Like, are you going to make a different choice for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
He said it much better, but it really was like calling. I don't know your conversation with him, but because we didn't have this conversation together, we resigned at different times, but he was very much like, this is the way it is now, and had chosen, which way he was going in that situation, which I understand as someone who is charged with making money now. Like I get it, and I also don't. Um, but I think the vision, came from like being in an uncomfortable situation and deciding as women that we wanted to chart our own path and write our own ticket and control our own destiny and not have someone dictate to us what things were going to be and not mistreat us in the process. Like Jolene and I both were going through, especially her at that time, some major, major health issues that I believe were exacerbated because of a level of stress that was in that environment. And yeah, it's like, I think the vision, one of the things I really do remember, and I have it in the journal, little cheetah print journal, Jolene, I had 20 years ago. I still have it. Uh, early out, like we were in our vision, we were building a nonprofit. We had like all these things, these workshops that we wanted to offer to women, to the underserved communities, certifications and things like that, that they could help better their lives. Oh, maybe we'll go back and rebuild that someday. But that was really like the vision for the business initially. Beyond we're miserable, we have to get out of here and determine where we go. And I think we quickly realized that, oh, that's wonderful. Nonprofits are great. We work with a lot of nonprofits. Love nonprofit work. But that comes with having to have a level of funding.
Mhm.
And we realized that we needed to live while we built this thing. And I can remember Jolene like taking a job at a coffee shop and doing some freelance gigs from a marketing perspective. And after that conversation, I was offered to stay on as a contractor for my role that was like in more of, was a director of education at the time. So like, I had that opportunity and was able to expand into some other association type clients. And after we kind of like got a handful or a couple of clients on our own, we decided, okay, we can breathe. Let's bring them together and begin to approach this work together. So that was that. Golly, it's like a trip down memory lane.
It is.
That first year in business, beyond being stressed and broke.
We talked a lot about fear and how fear is very it stops everything when you live in fear and you live in how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to eat? Is this the right decision? Should I jump here? Fear makes you stop in your tracks. It makes you paralyzed. And we used to talk about that a lot and
Mm-hmm.
how we had to kind of just let our fear go and kind of dive into this because it was almost like at the time it was our calling, and the more we kept trying to let life get in the way, the more we kept getting pulled back to it, and we realized that it was fear that was preventing the start. So once we let our fears go is when we just dove right into it.
Absolutely. I mean, and the fear was an ongoing thing, right? I think it was a reoccurring theme. And this fear and scarcity, like the kissing cousins, right? Um, there's not enough. Like how do we make this happen, and how do we both eat essentially? And yeah, there's just a lot that went into that. And as things progressed, over the years, let's fast forward, into year 9 and 10, and things really began to evolve in the business. And we had some great successes, and then things kind of started to shift downwards in business. Yes, because we were starting to lose some of those large association clients, um, not really doing any part of our own, but the relationship with we'll call it a governing body, like really shifted, and it took that work like away. Pretty much the work that we were doing was like taken out of the association's hands, and we probably pretty much weren't needed. And that was a huge hundreds of thousands of dollars, like over $100,000 of revenue that was no longer. So I'm really fast forwarding into like the last couple years. And I think that's where like the fear and anxiety that we had worked so hard to push through in years 1 through 8, and years 9 and 10, we were just in a different place personally and professionally. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like,
Mhm.
girl, where are my tissues? I'm not, and we won't stay here long. Maybe like the practicality of like, okay, that's great. Business relationships end every day. But if it's your sister, it's the person that
Mhm.
you, someone that you love and that you've been friends with, and it is your family and you spend Christmas with them, you spend, everything with them, what does that look like? That is the point of this. Like, we're going to tell you, what happens why we're no longer business partners, but that's not where we're going to live. It is no salacious story, unfortunately. But it's just not. Um, so let's talk about where you were, say year 9. Um,
So I guess for me personally, where everything sort of on a personal level changed for me. You talked a little bit about, my illness, and my illness, sort of escalated into I guess we'll just get raw here, into coming to terms with the fact that the end result of coming out of this illness meant that I would lose my ability to have kids. And that on its own was a tough decision. And right after that happened, my mom immediately got cancer. She got sick and she passed away immediately. And so within that, everything in my life, my perspective, everything changed drastically. And here I was at this point in my life where everybody's getting married, they're having kids, and I'm losing all those things. The long-term relationship I was in took also a huge toll, and we decided to go our separate ways. So my life had been completely falling apart, and I was sort of in the trenches of my own new discovery in something that, at a very young age, I didn't really have anybody around me that could relate. I was sort of on my own, just sort of figuring it out. Where on the flip side, everything for you was the complete opposite. So, here we were, these, two, sisters, and now for the first time in our existence, we didn't have that because we were experiencing two completely different things. And in the midst of all of this, everything, like you said, with these associations, were changing because they're going to a national level. So I'm surrounded by all this loss and tragedy. And as a very heavy emotional person, just sort of trying to survive. So, I wasn't showing up to the people that matter in a way that I had been in the past because I didn't even know how to show up for myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. When you talk about that, and I feel like I don't know the exact timeline, but the way that you've just laid it out, it kind of paints a much clearer picture for me because, I've been your friend, I've been your sister, I've been arm in arm with you as much as one I felt like a humanly be in most of those instances of, you know, going through surgeries, going through all the changes in your body and losing mom, um, you know, um, the end of the relationship, the all of that. And, you were you're right. Like we had kind of switched places, but in the most, but not, but it's more than switching places. It's like you had some devastating losses back to back to back to back to back. Like, and until you said it right now in this way, I knew it and I felt like I'm walking and living it with you because you cry, I cry, you bleed, I bleed. You know how we are. Um, I just didn't realize it was like all like that, like that. Cause that's like literally getting punched in the face, getting up, healing, and punched in the face again. And, like body blow after body blow. And hearing you talk about it in that way, um, not that I don't have all the empathy and compassion and all the understanding. It's just a new level of a revelation for me too. And like your perspective and what you were going through. Because from my perspective, I had been the single girl in this duo for years, how the extent of our relationship and dating and heartbreak and all the things, child. And And that began to come together for me. I met um, Brian, who would later become my husband. We were starting a family, getting married, all these things. And, um, you know, kind of fast forward to when you ultimately had to make the decision to leave and to leave BBS. It's easy to look at it from my perspective of like, oh, I felt so abandoned. I just have a baby and my business partner has left. Oh, literally have a newborn. But hearing you say, yeah, but I have been getting my ass beat for like 2 years prior, 2 or 3 years prior with all the loss. Um, it's just a different perspective. And that's why I love conversation like this, because perspective is everything, right?
Right, right. And I was happy for you. I loved Brian from the moment you met him. I knew you two were going to end up together. He knows I loved him from the moment, I knew this was right for you. But again, when you're so sad within yourself, it's hard
Right.
to articulate that in a way you needed me to say it. I wasn't capable of saying it.
Right. So what felt like to me, like all have our own things going on. And sometimes we're hyper focused on me, me, me. And I'm an only child. I can be guilty of that. Okay. I own it. And not realizing that the realization of your dreams sometimes is shining on a light on the devastation of another person's like what's happening around them. And we were in a place in the business like there wasn't enough money to go around. There
Mhm.
wasn't enough money to feed one of us, much less two of us. Um, and you ultimately make a decision to leave, and it didn't feel good at the time, but now, shoot, 8 years later, I can say it was for the best. And
Mhm.
grown, I've grown, the company's grown, like everything is as it should be. Um, and And that's a message to our audience too, is like, trust the process. Like, it hurts, it gets ugly. Like, your knee will scab over and bleed, and you'll pick it, and then you have to build new skin. But ultimately, it'll heal, and you'll never know that there was a scar. You make
Mhm.
a prick that shows that there was a scar if you give it time. Um,
Mhm.
so, yeah. What do you remember most about that transition and shift? Like, out of the business and like what that looks like for you.
So I'll just kind of back up a little bit
Yeah.
to talk about why I got there. And you hit on it at the time, there was no money. And,
Yeah.
this is Atlanta and I was freshly on my own.
Yeah.
And here I was living in the city, which is very expensive, by myself. And here we were, making next to nothing because we were losing clients and you were, you know, building your family. So you didn't have the time to dedicate hitting the streets like you normally would have. You just had a
Right.
baby, you had your own things going on. And one of our clients at the time saw their opportunity. And the more he saw me, we had worked with him for many years as one of our clients, and then he was very smart. He was a very smart businessman, and he saw his opportunity and he took it, and he approached me right around when you were just having, I think you literally just had her, you just had the baby, you're going through everything you're going through. And he approached me with an opportunity. And that opportunity was one that would end the struggle of, how am I going to feed myself? How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to survive? And when he dangled that, I jumped. And it wasn't because I was over the business or I was over Tashana or I was over this thing we built. It was a very hard decision, but it came down to survival. And, like you said, I'm thankful for that. And that was doing something I wasn't doing at the time. It would be, being on the road, traveling, going to all these nice places and, spending a lot of time within myself and not being behind a computer and experiencing the world at a different capacity. And it was great for me. It was great for me. And unfortunately, we had to lose ourselves at this time, to kind of find ourselves.
Mhm.
And it was very hard. It was not a decision I made easily, but I made that decision out of survival. And I think that speaks to a lot of business owners, especially entrepreneurs. We make a lot of decisions because of that nobody cares. I can't call the mortgage company and say, hey, I can't pay it because I love my friend.
Yep. But she
So
just had a baby and I just had a breakup. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
nobody cares about that. They want their bills paid on time, and again, it's not cheap living in the city.
Mhm.
So that
I live
decision
in the
was
boonies, by the way. A lot cheaper. A lot cheaper out here.
So yeah, so for me it was not an easy decision, even though it kind of was an easy decision because it was like no money, a lot of money, more money than I've ever seen in my life
Mhm.
to no money. And
Mhm.
so, I did that. And again, I wish I don't regret taking the job because it would have taught me about myself, but I do regret what we had to lose during that time. That was very hard on me. I know it was hard on you. I know this. Brian used to text me. Please, will you and my wife just get back together? Yeah,
I
yeah, used
never do that. I'm
to.
pop your beans.
Y'all would go to the oh, I guess I can't say a restaurant in my neighborhood, and he'd be like, "Please, please come and meet us. Please work it out."
Oh yeah, because he loved that spot for a long girl. We saw a roach outside at that restaurant one time. We was sitting outside because it's the city. And I was like, I'm good.
Like, there's more
Or
than one roach in that.
I'm sure there's roaches everywhere. But I didn't know that. I didn't know that. But like I think it's important to note that, this wasn't a business partner that I had no relationship. And I know that there's businesses that exist like that. But in most small businesses where you're entrepreneurs, you lock arms with your best friend because you and her are good at the same at similar things. Or, um, I just got a discovery call with you know two really good friends who are in a business together, right? Um, and it's not just the business relationship that you're losing when things part, but it also puts a huge strain on the personal relationship. And many people don't recover from that.
Mhm.
Most people don't. And I think that we've done, glory to God, a really good job of recovering. And we're not going to pretend that it was the same day that you left, that we were instantly still talking every other day or texting or any of that. Like, you left and I can remember like knowing because I read Who Moved My Cheese and kind of the writing was on the wall and I knew there was no money and I was in charge of the money. Um, but also being with, you left in May. I had Addie in January. And so I had this new baby, this new life with a stepson. Like my life was not milk and honey at the time either. Like it was rough and I was going through some debilitating postpartum and feeling like, oh, I just lost my best friend. Beyond the business, because everything we do is beyond the brand, um beyond that, that's the tough part. So I want to spend some time talking to people about like how we began to rebuild. Cause I feel like it maybe took us a year or two,
It
at
took some
least two.
time. And we started over, but we had to start over because we were two completely different people at that point.
Completely different people. Completely different people. So you and I had um some time together last Friday. um, before tragedy struck again. But we were kind of talking about this whole notion of like what brought us back together, and what do you have to say about that?
You know, I'm thinking about it now.
'Cause I don't really remember.
The first time, I don't remember either. I feel as if you were the one to kind of reach out. I feel like it was you, but I feel like it was one of those things where it's kind of like, you know, a relationship where we're like, hey, we want to be in each other's lives. And we knew, like, being these two emotional, independent women, that we couldn't really dive into why we were hurt yet, but we knew we needed to fix it. And
That
we were
had
willing.
years. Like I think we just now started talking about that in like the last couple years. Maybe we had like 2 years, like not totally not talking, but not really talking. And I feel like you were having an event when you were still doing all the dances.
Mhm.
And I was still supporting you in that. And I feel like the last one that you had, we weren't really like buddy buddy, but I still came and brought the family and all that. Um, I think extending that olive branch, like, yeah, but I still support you. And it was important for me to have you know that. And that's just how I show up in the world most times. But back to what I was saying about our conversation from Friday, you know, we've all had rifts with friends, whether it's a business rift or some other rift. And you know how sometimes you feel like if a friend has hurt your feelings that you really can't tell them because you think they're going to be defensive or you just don't want the drama or whatever the case may be. And I was telling you, like, I felt safe to say, yeah, I felt like you abandoned me. And I was over here with this husband and these kids, and I don't have a friend to talk to now about it. Like, I was able to tell you that, and you were able to share with me what you were going through in turn. And I think that emotional safety is what anchors relationship,
Mhm. I agree.
and the ability to be vulnerable and to cry and to snot and feel and have the full range of emotion, and even to have anger, respectful anger, and to express it rationally and be heard. That's all we want, to be seen, heard, and valued. Like that's all any of us really, really want.
It's true.
And I think that made the difference for me in terms of like how do we rebuild this? And you're much more mild most times than I am. So I think I don't know, and you correct me if I speak out of turn, but I wonder if me sharing that like gave you permission to share too.
It did. I would say yes. I th For me, I know I abandoned you during your time. I know what I did. And again, I did it out of survival, but I always had guilt for that because I love you and I wanted to love your child. I wanted to I always we always envisioned our families growing together. And I wanted to do all of those things.
Mhm.
And I knew I couldn't because I knew once I made that decision that I would have to pay the price. So I sort of kept my thoughts, my feelings in the back burner because I know what I did to you. I know what I did. And, I didn't want to be like, well, you did this and you did, and that like you said, we get defensive. We did this, we did that. I've evolved in
All
my
being
way.
selfish. We both did something.
Yeah, and I take accountability for what I did, and I can't change the past, but I can change the future. I could work towards a better future for us.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so let's talk about, like, anything else you wanna share about that time before we move on? Any of your other feelings or okay. So let's fast forward till today. So that was in Addie was born in 2017, it's 2025. So 8 years later, um, where are we?
So as I guess it was around COVID when everything changed and life changed and my time on the road stopped like a lot of people. And I
Mhm.
think around that time is when we started to work together and not, me being at this point, had always been following what's going on and following you, even though I wasn't in your life and still your biggest supporter and still a huge, cheerleader of the business. So, I was thankful and I was proud of what you had been growing and what you built it into. And I think, like you said, you needed to do that on your own. You needed to find your voice, find yourself to kind of do that. And, I think it was you who was like, well, now you're not on the road. So why don't you help out? Why don't
Yeah.
you, when I have projects? And I was very thankful for that. And so since then, I guess, yeah, it's been about 5 years, just came back as a team member, a mentor to other people on the team, again, as a supporter. This is, not a full-time thing. This is a I don't know the right way to explain it.
I call BBS Jolene's passion project. She does lead up um our web department um in a fractional capacity and has really mentored our other team member in some really wonderful ways, and it's just been an awesome support. And I think during COVID, the business had steadily grown over the last 8 to 10 years, and we had a really, really, a boom during, the most chaotic and tragic time in our history in this country. One of the most chaotic and tragic times. Business was really good here and has been for the most part since. And, being able to have you here is, somewhat of a security blanket for me too, because I know you know me, you know the way that I think. Um, and there's a lot of comfort that comes with that. Like, I like pretty things. Don't show her 'cause she ain't gonna get it. If it's ugly, she's not gonna even be able to see it. Oh, like she doesn't know that. Um, and so your help here has been really, super valuable. Um, but what keeps our, connection beyond work strong, do you think?
I think our core foundation and that we love and respect each other. And even through the ups and downs of life and business and all that other stuff, that energy, that thing I pulled from you that day one is never left. Ye and I don't know how to explain that. But
I am a firm believer that God gifts us with soulmates, and I don't believe we just get one that's like romantic and that's it. I believe that we get several, and I think that energetic spark that you felt was like what you feel when you meet soulmates. We have friends that are literally soulmates or kindred spirits. My mother is definitely not just my mother, she is a soulmate. My husband obviously is a soulmate, like Joline. Like, you have these core relationships that you can feel like, oh, maybe I've known this person before without getting too hokey pokey. Um, but you feel that energy is something that that God has drawn you into each other's lives for a reason. So, yeah, I think that's really telling. what would you say to other women who are kind of navigating this space where they have the business failed, the business relationship failed, but they're trying to figure out a way to maintain their friendship?
To trust the process. You spoke of it earlier in how life does things to evolve us or to push us. And it's very easy in the moment when things are falling down and anxiety's creeping in and uncertainty and all that other stuff to get caught up in it and to just focus on that and to just be willing to run or give up, but just to kind of surrender to it because it's all part of the process. And even those things that are bad, if you really take the time to see why it's bad, to grow from it, therapy, writing, whatever you need to do, you see that doesn't define you, that situation, which you make coming out of it is what matters.
Yeah.
And to focus on that.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Like, I'll put bad in air quotes because, our pain often has purpose. And even in this pain of like the transitions of this relationship, and you go in and working for, someone else that was a situation. Um, like it all has purpose. All of our pain, all of these lessons, and that's why I wanted to have you on, and we've had some pretty in-depth conversations about like what this conversation is and what it isn't. And what this conversation is, and I'll say it again, I said it like 5 times, is really to be a blessing to somebody else. Like this was something that is super painful for us. And it is our hope that you can use what we're saying and take the space, even if it's a year or two or whatever it is, to rebuild your relationship. And if it's worthwhile, we believe that you can. And if it's something a relationship you're meant to have, we're living proof that you can. So what how do you feel now that we're, back working closely together and having cocktails at our spot? What's the
I
vibe?
think I think it's great. It makes me so happy that we have been able to work through this. And I feel like this is almost just the beginning.
Mhm.
We're continuing to build and to give each other this safe space. I know like it wasn't too long ago when I was having my another mental break and I reached out to you and you were that person I thought of that I could just cry and you could do the same. So I feel like little by little, it's becoming even bigger than it was. Before we were two hustlers, we were trying to survive, we were trying to be heard, we were trying to do all these things. And now we are strong, independent, fantastic women.
Beautiful in our 40s. Like, we're young. We were so young. Like, we were so young. It's ridiculous like how young we were. Um, and I think that that's so telling. And sometimes, you have to knock down a structure to build out something that's more powerful, and more beautiful, and that honors everybody in the relationship. And I think that again, the lesson here is that love is always worth it. Your friends, your sisters, it's always worth it. And sometimes relationships take a moment. Sometimes you part ways and you come back, and you pick up. Sometimes a little bit more timidly than before, but um, everything works together for good.
Hmm.
You were talking about like the recent time that you had and the recent time that I've been having the last couple of weeks, and like how you've showed up for me. I really appreciate it, and I'm not going to get weepy. I haven't cried by the way. Thank you. It's kind of like a big deal. Um, you know, life is happening, and giving people grace and being able to see things beyond your vantage point. So just putting yourself in somebody else's shoes for 1 minute, I think changes everything.
It does.
And it really does. It really gives you so much grace and kindness and compassion and all the things. But You're such an important part of our team here at PBS. Let's talk about a little bit about what you're doing and like what you enjoy about the work here.
So doing a lot of the web development, a lot of that. But I would say the thing I love most is the mentoring.
Mhm.
I have taken I'm very passionate about teaching people that want to learn, and I've had that opportunity. So my role this time I feel is less of, whereas before I was doing all the work, you were selling, I was working, and
Mhm.
now I'm in this. Yes, I'm still doing work, but I'm also empowering other young women
Mhm.
and giving them knowledge, because when we look back at our situation at the original job, the issue we were having was a woman who was older that didn't want to teach us. She didn't want to mentor us. She wanted to fight us, push us away, bring us down.
Mhm.
And that's not something we ever felt strong about. We always wanted to mentor, to teach, to give those, next in line the knowledge we had, and to push them to be just as strong, just as powerful, just as smart, and to
And
learn along the way.
better than us. Like, I think that that's the thing too. Like, so many in our career, this is a whole nother conversation that we have to have someday. Is like the need to that sometimes older people feel to compete, especially as women, as opposed to how do I make this easier for you?
Mhm.
You have always had a gift for mentoring and teaching. I can
Aw.
remember when mom used to help us out with stuff, and she would talk about how mean I was and how impatient I was. Remember? And I'm still asking Joline to help me. And you're just so patient. And I'd be like, you ain't got it. Let's go. Like, what's the problem? But it really is like a gifting of yours. Like, you are really gifted to teach and mentor that way. And I just had another business idea for you. So
Aw. Oh my
I
gosh, I'm
think
gonna
it's
cry.
really a gifting. Like, that is a gift. Everybody know I don't have it. Okay. I don't have it. That into this. And you've done such a good job of like, training team up um to help and to duplicate your energies. But I can talk to you all day because we literally do talk all day. Uh, I just want to say that I really, really appreciate you taking the time to be here. Um, and I want to round out with a little fun because this conversation a little heavy in spots. So let's have a little fun before you go, okay? So
Okay.
I like to wrap up these sessions with a lightning round. So I'm going to ask you a few questions and I want you to name the thing that first comes to mind. So morning person or night owl?
Morning.
One word that describes our time building BBS together.
One word. Passion.
Oh. Your favorite way to recharge your creativity.
Sleeping.
Girl, look, you're getting old. Because I still am like, I'm gonna go take a walk so I can get myself together. And no, you sis, keep it to my heart because that's my way. This is the difference between 20 and 30-year-old versions, really, and 40-year-old versions. Sweet. I love it. Remember, you used to go on those walks. I'm gonna go for a walk and
Nope, now give me my bed and my PJs.
wait, I'm gonna go to sleep. I love it. One book that you think every business person should read.
Ooh. One book. Mm, come back to that one. I can't. That's
We'll put in the show notes as Jolene thinks about it.
yeah.
What she comes up with for us. But again, I want to thank you for being on today, and for being such a big part of not just BBS, but of my life. Like you are a big part of my life. And I think our story is a really beautiful reminder that love conquers all and that relationships can evolve and still remain strong and honest and full of grace. So, for those listening, I hope this conversation encourages you to lead with both your heart and clarity and give grace to those around you. Um, so thank you for being here and for sharing your heart.
Thank you for having me. I love you.
I love you. All right. We'll be back next week with another episode of Conversations Beyond the Brand. So take care and be good to each other. Bye.